The fall itself was not dramatic. There was no scream, no long drop into emptiness, no moment that would later be described as sudden or violent. One moment, Lena Kovacs was moving forward along the narrow winter trail, boots placed carefully on compacted snow, and the next, the surface beneath her left foot collapsed inward, folding like something hollow that had been pretending to be solid. Her body dropped hard and twisted sideways. She struck rock beneath the snow and stopped abruptly, wedged at an unnatural angle between ice-packed ground and stone. The impact forced the air from her lungs in a sharp, involuntary burst. For a brief second, she could not breathe at all. The fall was shallow. That was what made it dangerous. Snow closed around her immediately, sliding down and pressing against her shoulders and back. When she tried to move, her leg responded with pain sharp enough to force her still. The space around her tightened, the weight of snow and frozen ground settling as if it had been waiting for exactly this shift. Above her, the trail continued. The ridge was narrow but passable, etched into white and gray. Wind cut across it steadily, loud enough to swallow sound. Other hikers were already moving past the spot where she had fallen. From above, nothing looked wrong. There was no open crevasse, no visible drop, only a shallow depression in the snow that gave no indication of how tightly someone could be pinned beneath it. Lena called out once. The sound did not travel far. Wind carried it away, breaking it apart before it could fully form. She tried again, louder this time, forcing air through her chest despite the pain. Her voice reached the surface weakly, indistinct. Someone slowed. A shadow shifted near the edge of the trail. A figure looked down briefly, searching for movement, for something obvious. They could not see how her leg was trapped, how her body was angled, how little room she had to shift. "I'm okay," she called up. The words came out automatically, a reflex shaped by years of hiking culture, where delays are discouraged and problems are minimized unless they are unmistakable. The lie simplified things. It allowed movement to continue. The figure nodded once and moved on. Footsteps receded. Wind filled the space they left behind. Lena tried to free herself. She pressed her palms against the snow at her sides, attempting to push her shoulders upward. The snow shifted slightly, then settled back heavier than before. Each movement collapsed more weight inward, narrowing the space around her chest. When she tried to pull her leg free, pain flared again, bright and precise, radiating upward and forcing her to stop. Something was wrong. Not broken, not yet, but wrong enough to matter. Cold began working immediately, creeping through her clothes where they pressed against snow and stone. Moisture from her breath collected along the edge of her hood and froze. The air inside the small pocket around her face grew damp and thin. Time did not rush. That was the other problem. The sky above the ridge was already changing. Clouds thickened, flattening the light and erasing depth. What had been sharp contrast minutes earlier became a uniform gray-white that made distance difficult to judge. Wind picked up slightly, pushing snow across the trail in fine sheets. Lena stopped trying to move and focused on breathing. Each inhale was shallow. Each exhale fogged the space in front of her face. Her body was already adjusting, conserving heat where it could, slowing reactions without permission. She tested her hands again. They worked, but more slowly now. She tried calling out once more, timing it between gusts, forcing her voice louder than felt comfortable. This time, no one slowed. No one answered. The trail above her was still in use. People were moving. She was no longer part of that movement. The realization came gradually, settling not as panic, but as clarity. She was not in immediate danger of falling farther. She was not exposed to open air. From the outside, this did not look like an emergency. That was precisely the problem. Snow pressed steadily against her back and shoulders, its weight increasing with every small shift of her body. Her leg remained trapped, angle unchanged. Each attempt to adjust made the pain sharper, not duller. The cold deepened. Fingers began to lose precision. What had been discomfort turned into a distant ache, spreading slowly. Breathing required more effort now, chest rising against resistance. Above her, the ridge looked unchanged. Wind continued to scrape across it. Lena Kovacs was 29 years old. She had crossed mountain passes before. She had planned this route carefully. Everything about it had looked manageable. But manageability depended on movement, and movement was no longer an option. As minutes passed, her situation began to shift from accident to condition. The longer she remained pinned, the more the snow compacted. The more the cold took hold, the less strength she had to counter it. Rescue required visibility, and visibility required something to change. Nothing did. The ridge remained active, the wind remained loud, and Lena remained where the mountain had accepted her, not falling, not free, suspended between both. Before the fall, Lena Kovacs looked like someone who knew what she was doing. That impression did not come from bravado or exaggerated confidence. It came from consistency. Her routes were researched, her gear was appropriate, her public advice cautious. She avoided extremes, discouraged reckless shortcuts, and spoke often about knowing when to turn back. Among those who followed her work, she was seen as reliable, not fearless, but measured. Lena was 29 years old. She grew up in Budapest, far from terrain that could trap a person without warning. Her early life had been predictable: school, university, part-time jobs, a city rhythm that rewarded planning and punished delay. When she discovered long-distance hiking and solo travel, it felt less like escape and more like expansion, space where time slowed and decisions belonged to no one else. She did not become a traveler to chase danger, at least, not intentionally. Her online presence grew gradually. She documented trips without dramatization, favoring quiet footage over spectacle. Sunrise shots, careful packing lists, notes about weather windows and pacing. Her tone was calm, instructive. She criticized impulsiveness and emphasized preparation. That restraint earned trust. This winter route had fit that identity perfectly. It was not marketed as extreme. Others had crossed it before. The elevation was manageable, the exposure limited, the forecast stable enough to justify the attempt. She had studied reports, reviewed satellite images, checked recent conditions. Nothing suggested urgency. Nothing suggested retreat. In the days leading up to the hike, her routine was ordinary. She packed methodically, weighing items and making small adjustments. Batteries were charged, layers tested, emergency gear accounted for. She checked the forecast repeatedly, noting cold temperatures but no severe storms. Wind was expected, but within tolerance. Snowpack was reported as compacted. She informed family that she would be offline for several days. She posted a short update from the train window as the landscape shifted from city to foothills. The reaction was familiar: encouragement, admiration, reminders to stay safe. She acknowledged them briefly and moved on. The first day on the trail passed without incident. Conditions were cold but predictable. Snow held firm underfoot. Visibility was good. Lena moved at a steady pace, conserving energy, filming selectively. She took notes on light, on terrain, on sound, habits formed over years of documenting without rushing. She encountered other hikers along the way, some alone, some in pairs. Exchanges were brief, polite, functional. Winter hiking discourages unnecessary conversation. Everyone understood that stopping too long meant cooling down. At one point, she noticed a man struggling with a pack strap that had slipped awkwardly against his shoulder. His fingers were stiff, movements clumsy. She stopped, adjusted the strap quickly, and handed it back without comment. He nodded, thanked her, and continued. It was an unremarkable interaction. Later, it would matter. As the trail climbed, subtle changes began to appear. The snow sounded different underfoot, duller, less crisp. Lena adjusted her steps accordingly, placing weight more deliberately. Light flattened as clouds thickened overhead, erasing contrast and making distance harder to judge. She slowed slightly, compensating without consciously framing it as concern. These were not alarms. They were signals she had learned to interpret as manageable. Turning back requires a clear reason. Nothing had crossed that threshold yet. By the time she reached the section of trail where the fall would occur, conditions still appeared stable. The surface looked solid. The depression beneath the snow was invisible from above. The angle of the slope did not suggest collapse. From the outside, it looked like continuity. Her experience told her she was still within acceptable margins. That belief did not fail all at once. It failed gradually, quietly, without announcing itself. When Lena fell, it was not because she ignored warnings. It was because none of the individual factors had seemed severe enough to justify stopping. Each choice, taken alone, appeared reasonable. That was the pattern. Preparation had brought her here. Experience had reassured her. Caution had slowed her pace, but it had not reversed it. By the time she was pinned beneath the snow, her previous decisions lined up behind the present moment without contradiction. There was no single mistake to point to, no dramatic error, only a sequence of acceptable judgments that had narrowed her options. As she lay trapped, the mountain did not challenge her competence. It rendered it irrelevant. Above her, the trail continued to be used. Others passed through the same space without incident, stepping over the surface that concealed her. From their perspective, nothing marked the spot as dangerous. From below, everything had already changed. The difference between those two perspectives, surface and depth, was no longer theoretical. It was physical. And as time passed, Lena's situation shifted from temporary to conditional. Cold took hold incrementally. Snow compacted further. Strength ebbed in ways that could not be reversed with rest alone. What remained ahead was no longer a question of preparation. It was a question of time. At first, Lena Crevasse treated the situation as temporary. That instinct came from experience. Many problems in the mountains resolve themselves if a person stays calm long enough. Weather shifts, strength returns, small obstacles loosen with careful movement. She assumed this would be the same, something that required patience, not force. She tested her position again, cautiously. Her leg remained trapped at the same angle, pinned between compacted snow and rock. When she tried to rotate her foot outward, pain flared immediately, sharp and localized, forcing her to stop. The sensation was no longer just discomfort. It had a shape now, a boundary. She focused on her hands. They still worked, but less precisely than before. Fingers felt thick, movements slightly delayed. She brushed snow away from her face, trying to keep the small pocket of air clear. Each motion collapsed more weight inward, snow settling tighter around her shoulders. Breathing became deliberate. Cold had reached a point where it no longer shocked. It numbed. The ache spread slowly from points of contact. Her back, her trapped leg, the side of her ribs pressed against frozen ground. Her jacket insulated where it could, but compression reduced its effectiveness. Time passed unevenly. Minutes stretched when she was still. They compressed when pain demanded attention. She checked her watch once, then stopped. Measuring time did not change its behavior. She called out again. This time her voice sounded different, thinner, less forceful. Wind carried it away before it could travel far. No response followed. The ridge above remained active, indistinct sounds of movement passing intermittently, then fading. Lena understood then that she was no longer visible. From above, the depression in the snow did not suggest urgency. From below, every second added weight, physically and otherwise. She tried another approach. Using her elbows, she attempted to shift her upper body upward, creating space to free her leg. The snow resisted immediately, collapsing inward with more pressure than before. Her chest tightened as the pocket of air narrowed. Panic threatened briefly, rising fast, then receding as she forced herself to stop moving. Panic would cost oxygen. Oxygen was already limited. She adjusted instead, focusing on minimizing movement. She positioned her head to keep her airway clear, angling her face toward the least resistance. She slowed her breathing consciously, extending exhales to reduce condensation and freezing around her mouth. These were not heroic actions. They were technical ones. Cold continued its work. Sensation in her fingers dulled further. Pain in her leg softened into something deeper, less defined, spreading outward. That worried her more than sharp pain would have. Sharp pain signals engagement. Dull pain signals loss. She tested her toes. Response was delayed. Above her, light shifted again as clouds thickened. What little contrast remained vanished. Snow began moving across the ridge in fine sheets, driven by wind. Sound flattened further. Distance lost meaning. The mountain closed in quietly. Lena's breathing grew shallower despite her efforts. Muscles began to tremble involuntarily, a response she recognized immediately. Shivering meant heat loss had reached a threshold. She tried to move her leg again. This time the pain was different, less sharp, more widespread. The resistance remained absolute. The angle had not changed. She stopped. Every attempt now carried cost with no gain. Cold affected judgment subtly. Thoughts looped. Focus narrowed. The idea of waiting, once reasonable, began to erode. Waiting was no longer neutral. It was active deterioration. She understood this without needing to articulate it fully. Rescue required visibility. Visibility required someone to notice. Notice required time she might not have. Her phone was inaccessible, pinned awkwardly beneath layers. Even if she could reach it, signal at this elevation was unreliable at best. She did not attempt it yet. Movement risked collapse. Instead, she concentrated on staying conscious. She recited practical details silently, names, dates, routes she had taken before, mental anchors, techniques used to maintain clarity in isolation. Cold pressed deeper. Her breath slowed. Shivering intensified, then weakened. Another threshold crossed. That change frightened her more than the pain had. She called out again, forcing volume despite the burn in her chest. The sound left her mouth and disappeared into wind. No reply followed. The ridge above her remained indistinct, occupied by people who could not see what lay beneath their feet. The realization settled in fully now. This was no longer about freeing herself. It was about how long her body could resist conditions it was not designed to endure. Snow compacted further with her weight and the wind's pressure. Space narrowed imperceptibly. Her ability to shift diminished. Cold climbed steadily, claiming sensation, clarity, strength. Time stopped behaving as something that could be waded through. It became something that acted. And Lena Crevasse, pinned beneath a surface that looked harmless from above, crossed a quiet line, from accident into survival, and from survival into something colder, where outcomes narrowed without sound. The mountain did not rush her. It did not need to. The first report came indirectly. A hiker descending the ridge the following morning mentioned a place where the snow looked wrong, slightly sunken, uneven in a way that did not match wind patterns or footprints. It was not an alarm, just an observation passed along to a ranger, then to another. In winter, those observations matter. By the time the search team reached the area, conditions had already shifted. Snowfall during the night had softened the surface, smoothing edges and disguising irregularities. Wind continued to move across the ridge, redistributing weight and sound. From above, the trail looked intact, safe, ordinary. They began methodically. Probing poles pressed into the snow at measured intervals. Each insertion tested depth, resistance, structure. For several minutes, nothing appeared unusual. Then one pole sank farther than expected, meeting less resistance than it should have. They marked the spot. When they cleared the snow carefully, they found fabric first. the edge of a jacket sleeve compressed tightly against ice. Then a shoulder, then a face, pale and partially rimmed with frost. Lena Crevasse was found where the surface had folded inward, exactly where the trail gave no warning from above. Her body was angled slightly, position unchanged from where she had fallen. Snow had compacted around her during the night, sealing the space tightly. One leg remained trapped beneath hardened layers and rock. Her hands were near her chest, fingers curled inward, gloves still on. There were no signs of struggle in the surrounding snow, no wide disturbances, no frantic movement, only small shifts, subtle impressions left by a body that had tried to conserve space, heat, and air. The extraction took time. Rescuers worked carefully, removing snow in controlled sections to avoid collapse. The cold preserved details but erased urgency. Movements were precise, procedural. No one rushed. Rushing does not help at that stage. When they freed her completely, the body showed no external trauma beyond what the fall itself would explain. The leg had not broken cleanly. The angle and compression suggested severe pain, but not immediate fatal injury. The cause was not the fall. It was the conditions that followed. The report would later list it clearly. Cause of death: hypothermia, compounded by immobilization and prolonged exposure in winter conditions. Time of death: undetermined. They documented everything: photographs, coordinates, depth measurements, weather data, the condition of the snowpack, the visibility from above. Each detail mattered not because it would change the outcome, but because it explained how something so final could happen so quietly. There was no evidence of negligence by others on the trail, no signs that anyone had ignored clear distress. Her calls had not traveled far enough. Wind direction, terrain, and timing had worked against visibility. From above, the depression was indistinguishable from normal winter surface variation. In other words, it looked manageable. Her belongings were recovered nearby: a backpack with standard winter gear, extra layers, food, a camera still intact, lens fogged with condensation that had frozen along the edges. The battery was dead. The last footage showed nothing unusual: steady movement, white terrain, a stable frame. No dramatic moment was recorded, no final message, just continuity, followed by absence. The recovery team transported her down carefully. No one spoke more than necessary. In these situations, words rarely add anything useful. Later, notifications were made. Family first, then local authorities. Then, quietly, those who followed her work online, through a brief statement confirming her death during a winter hike. No details were released immediately. They rarely are. Speculation appeared quickly anyway. Some questioned the route choice, others focused on equipment. A few blamed solo travel itself. Discussions unfolded without context, shaped by assumptions made from photographs and fragments of information. What did not appear in those conversations was the space beneath the snow, the compression, the trapped angle, the way cold works when movement stops. The trail remained open. No warning sign was added. The ridge had not changed. Conditions similar to those on the day of the fall would appear again, as they always do in winter. Snow fell later that week, filling in the depression completely. There was no marker left behind. From the surface, the place where Lena Crevasse had been trapped became indistinguishable from the rest of the ridge. Boots passed over it again. Poles pressed into it again. No one noticed anything unusual. The mountain did not record what happened there. It did not remember her name. It did not remember her preparation. It did not remember how close the trail had come to releasing her. It only held what it was given for as long as conditions allowed. And when it released her, it did so without ceremony, returning a body that explained the outcome, but not the experience. What remained was not a lesson. It was a reminder, quiet, uncomfortable, and easy to miss. Some dangers do not announce themselves. Some mistakes do not look like mistakes. And sometimes, the difference between moving on and never leaving at all is hidden beneath a surface that appears completely solid. Some stories do not end with answers. They end with silence. The mountains did not take her because she was careless. They took her because sometimes even preparation is not enough. If this story stayed with you, it means you understand how thin the line can be between movement and stillness. Subscribe if you want to hear the next one. Some stories should not be forgotten.